Hey, welcome back. Right, so it's finally arrived. Let's start putting everything that we've learned so far into doing some actual tattoo designs. Please, this is a fun exercise, so let's not be too concerned at this stage. If you have been struggling with the lesson so far and still not quite happy with the standard of your straight or curved lines, then please don't worry. The little practice drills that we've been doing are great at teaching and learning the basics. However, they are extremely difficult to get perfect, and that's because they show every error. On the straight lines, if they've even the smallest wobble or slightest error, it stands out like a sore thumb. And the same goes for curved lines too. But that's exactly why we need to be doing these drills when learning. We need to be doing drills that show our weak areas, because that's how we're going to improve. So before we start this lesson, please look back over at practice mats from the previous lessons. What areas do you need to improve more or less in? Are your straight lines better than your curved? This is massively important and something that you should do on every tattoo. Now, I've years of tattooing under my belt, and I've done literally thousands and thousands of tattoos, and there's never been one that I haven't looked at afterwards and thought, right, if I were to do this tattoo again, how would I make it better? Are the lines crisp? Are areas that have been shaded being done neat enough or smooth enough? Have I captured the right amount of contrast in tattoo? It's so important that if you want to get better at doing something, you look and know what areas need to be improved. You'll never do a tattoo that you're 100% happy with, and that's a good thing. Constantly, you need to be looking at how you can make your work even better, and never settle with the level that you're currently at. That being said, let's start today's lesson. Now, I've already drawn these designs up, and there's a link in description so you can go print them off yourself. Let's start today's lesson. Okay, so if you follow the link in description below this video, it's going to lead you to this design. This is stencil that I've made. I'm not going to go through drawing alt stencil up, we've done it numerous times now. But if you just want to draw that stencil up, get it printed, trace it onto your carbon paper and put it onto your practice skin. Give that 10 to 15 minutes to dry. Whilst that's happening, get your gloves on, get all your workstations set up, ready to go. So if you just want to pause the video, come back once you're at this stage. Again, we're going to be using as 5 liner. Like I've already explained, up until this point, I just want you to get used to how a specific needle feels, how it vibrates in your hand, how it enters skin, or in this case, a practice mat. To stick with one needle, one machine, just to get used to and familiar with how things work. In the next couple of videos, we're going to be moving on and using different size liners. It's going to be a lot short. You already know the techniques and drills, but we're going to cover different needles and also how it affects your machine and your hand speed, depending on which needle that you're using. But for the time being, get your machine set up with needle that we've already been using, 5 liner. Okay, so we've got this design. It's not like as drills previously, it's an actual tattoo design that we're doing now. So I'm just going to cover a few things, same as before. We're wanting to start at the bottom. That being, if we start in at the top, you can see his hands, we're going to smudge everything. And that's really important later on when we're tattooing people onto skin. The idea being, you want to keep that design from smudging best that you can. So anything that you can do to avoid rubbing it constantly is always going to be a good thing. Now, we've already covered straight lines, curved lines, circles, machine positioning. So bear all them things in mind whilst you're doing this design. You can either start and come towards you or away from you, sideways. When it's ideal, if you're comfortable, the ideal hand position is twisting so the machine's facing the direction of the line where you're going. However, sometimes it's not comfortable to do that and it's not ideal, which we've already covered in previous lessons. So this is kinda a little experiment to see what methods you feel most comfortable with. So I'm just going to do this first little point, and as I'm doing it, I'll talk you through it so you understand a little bit better. As you know, I'm left-handed, so I'm not starting at right hand side, I'm starting at the bottom towards left hand side, and I'll work my way across, and then I'll move up a little bit, start at left hand side, work my way across. Don't worry if you're thinking, oh God, panicking, I'm right-handed. Just do exact same, but from opposite side. So right-handed people would start here. It's not anything to panic about, thinking, well, I'm opposite hand. It's no big deal. Most people out there are going to be right-handed. The left-handed people will be the minority. So I'm going to I can see that dot. So I know now that the end of my needle, as we've said time and time again, is just touching the surface of skin. Same down here. So I'm going to do this outer line. It's a curved line. I'm not twisting my hand right round and using the ideal hand positioning, because that's not comfortable for me. Also, just bear in mind, whilst you're doing this, get your practice mat in front of you, and then do not move that practice mat. Don't be twisting your mat to help you get comfortable. Use this as an exercise. A person's arm, you can move it a little bit, but you need to get used to tattooing in all different directions and get comfortable in any movement. So this first line, there you go. Now, like I said, that line is easy to see. It's not made a mess. It's not splattered ink everywhere. So when you are in that position, the less trauma you cause to the skin, or in this case, practice mat, same principle, the better. So if you're constantly, every line wiping, you're just causing unnecessary trauma and friction to skin. So if you can do so without making a mess, rather than wiping that line instantly, just move on to the next line. So I'll wait for that dot. So you can see both of those lines so far I've done in one pass. Remember from previous lesson, if I were to get halfway running out of ink, then I'd gradually taper out, top my ink up, come back, gradually taper back in to join that line up. So now I've done that one little section and it's not all messy. I'm just going to clean that little section up now. Bearing in mind, I don't want to be rubbing the rest of the stencil. Also, a really good tip. So on practice mats, I'm just using Dettol wipes to clean it. And then just to get rid of that excess moisture off top, I'm just using some dry tissue just to get rid of it. Now, when you're tattooing a person, actual skin, you're going to be using tissue. Now there's loads of brands out there. A lot of them disintegrate when they get wet and you're rubbing it and they fall apart. Now I use Plenty, the brand Plenty, and it is the best tissue that I've ever used across all the other brands, and it's the only brand that I'll use. Same as gloves, I've got particular gloves that I use. I might do a video on that, different brands. It's not sponsored in any way, shape or form, but just things that you're using every day on every tattoo: tissue, gloves, aftercare products, ointments that you're using whilst you're tattooing skin. You're going to find your favourite. Once you do, just stick with it. Try different ones. But after years and years, I've found particular ones that I think are best and most comfortable. So again, I could now either move up slightly this side, because my hand's not going to be smudging anything, or kind of like an old-fashioned typewriter. That's typically what I do. I work my way across, move up, work my way across, move up, work my way across. But that's not necessarily meaning that you've got to do exact same. You might find it more comfortable now to move up the left-hand side a little bit, or if you're right-handed, you might find you've just done this one, you might find it more comfortable to move up that side a little bit. Whatever you find comfortable. I'm going to do this line next to show you. It's a curved line. Now, ideally, the machine should be pointing in the direction it line. Now, that's really uncomfortable for me. I'm going to be rubbing on stencil or twisting right round. I'm not moving my body position, but to get my hand right round there, it's really uncomfortable, so don't do it. Only do it when it is ideal. When it's not ideal, just lift your machine up a little bit more, like we've already covered in previous lessons, and do it just more at a 90-degree angle than arched, leant right back, sorry. So I'm going to do this line. So we're going in. I can see I'm running out, so I'm just tapering out. Now I'm going to taper back in. It's not made a mess. I can clearly see next line that I'm doing. It's not getting in my way. So I'm not going to wipe that and cause more trauma, more stress to the skin than what's necessary. So I'm just going to move straight on to the next line. You can see I'm running out, so I'm going to just taper out. Let's taper back in. For those that are completely new to tattooing, a lot of this is still going to feel unnatural. And what I mean when I'm saying that is, you'll have to think about doing things. So you'll have to think about taking it out as you and tapering it as you're running out of ink, or if your hand's uncomfortable. That's absolutely fine. But after you've been doing it, by the end of this course, it will be natural. You won't think about it. It's almost like when you're learning to drive a car, there's loads of things to be thinking about and doing all at the same time, and it can be quite stressful. But once you've been driving a while, you don't think about pressing clutch in whilst you're looking in the mirror, looking where you're going, changing gear with one hand, other hand's on steering wheel. There's loads to be doing, but it just comes natural after plenty of practice. So I still haven't wiped it all yet, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that next line. Let's give that a little clean. Okay, so we've done 2 bottom petals, so to speak. It's not really an image, it's a pattern. Patterns are really popular. Mandala, all different types of patterns. They're really common. This is a really good practice for something that could potentially be a future tattoo that you do on a person. So again, like I already said, I'm left-handed. If you're right-handed, you'd be over here doing this bit next. If you're left-handed, I've done the bottom bit. I'm now going to move up and start progressing doing these bits, and then I'll work my way across all these circles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of minutes of just tattooing. Follow along, look at how I'm doing it, and just think to yourself, go back to previous lessons, what's he doing there? I'll try and do it relatively slow so you can follow along, but rather than me telling you what I'm doing, just see if you can work it out for yourself. So just as a little quick one, you could see then I moved my hand from this position, doing this line, and twisted it round just to make it more comfortable to do that one in one motion. Try and pick up on the little things, because it's the little things that's going to make a huge difference. But at the same time, what's comfortable for me may not be comfortable for you or anybody else. There's no right or wrong. I'm giving you guidance. But I'm also trying to tell you things and do things in a particular way where you can find what's best for you. Throughout this course, I'm going to be showing and teaching things, methods that I don't even use. Now, that's just because I don't use them doesn't mean that they're not worth putting in the course. Loads of times have I just sat and watched other artists tattooing and thought, oh, I like that lining technique that he's used or she's used. And then I've thought I'll give that a go. And then after trying it for myself, I've not been comfortable using it. So therefore I'll just go back to how I'd typically do something. But there's loads of different ways of doing the same thing and getting the same result. So throughout the course I'm going to teach you loads of different ways of coming to the same outcome. And we're going to do plenty of practice drills. And then you can say, well, I prefer doing the other method to this one. I'm a lot more comfortable at doing that. And I find it easier to get the result I'm after by using that method over this one. But that's your choice. Everybody that's on the course, not everybody's going to choose the same method, so I thought it'd be better to just show everybody them all, or as many as that I can think of, ones that I use myself and ones that I don't particularly use, but I know other artists use them, and see which you prefer. So I'm not just teaching you things that I use, I'll be teaching you things that I don't use as well. So as you can see, I've not even cleaned it yet because I'm moving across areas, but just let's give that a little clean just so you can see where we're at. And don't rush with this, just take your time. And like I said, I've said it in previous lessons, if you can tattoo these mats to a good standard, a good level of tattooing, believe me, when it comes to the real thing, in my personal experience, it is far easier tattooing a person than these artificial things. So you can see I'm working my way from left to right, wherever it feels comfortable. I'm doing each line and treating it as if it is its own line. When you're doing a tattoo, which we'll be going into a lot more detail later on in course, but don't look at the tattoo as a whole image. Break it down into small sections, and we're going to be doing this later in masses of detail. But when I'm looking at this next curve, I'm looking at that as a curved line. That is it. It is as simple as that. I look at that as a half circle. I don't look at it as part of the design. I don't look at it as anything else other than that one half circle there. And that's all I think. And when you break an image down like this, which we're going to be doing loads later on in course, so don't get het up about it at the minute. But when you break down any image, it doesn't matter how complex it is, whether it's a portrait, a really detailed mandala that's got tons and tons of small lines, a new school, old school, it does not matter. If you're breaking the tattoo down into small bite-sized chunks, you can do any tattoo. And that's the method that I want you to attack every tattoo with. Don't look at it as a full piece. Look at each individual part. So this part, I didn't even look at this first line that we did as part of a petal, so to speak. I looked at that as in, I'm starting at A and finishing at B. I am not interested in rest at tattoo whatsoever. I just want to get that line from there to the best of my ability. That is it. Give it another little wipe. Just be really careful not to wipe excessively, because all it's going to do is rub your stencil off. Now, the longer you leave your stencil to dry, ideally overnight, you'd be able to rub it. And it's got a bit more give. Whereas, because we've only just put this one on, if we do wipe it too much, it's just going to rub all the stencil off. Now, as I said, constantly you want to be looking at, see how you can improve. Now, I don't know whether you can see it on camera, but there's just a couple of little points here where the lines don't quite meet. So rather than waiting until we've got right to end and then going back, in a tattoo, when you're doing it on a person, it's better to just rectify anything as you're going along. because otherwise you get to the end of the tattoo and then you're having to search through to try and titivate bits and you can miss bits. Whereas if you do a small section and just give it all a check, I can see that there's a tiny bit there, there's a tiny bit there. The rest of the lines all meet up and are quite solid looking. So same again, I'm going to do this arch. Now I'm not wanting to go all the way around because there's a chance that I'm going to rub stencil off. So like when we were doing these circles and not bigger ones where we had to separate the circles into smaller bite-sized chunks, remember to taper in and taper back out, because you're joining the lines effectively. So there's no start or stop, and you don't want to see lumpy bits where it's noticeably where you've joined in to that line again. Otherwise it could potentially just ruin entire tattoo. So you can see I've tapered in, just working my way round. Now I didn't run out of ink there, but my hand started to become a little bit uncomfortable. So rather than pushing it to a point where I didn't feel stable, I've just stopped, I've just tapered out, I'll leave it at that. So we'll give that a little wipe again. As careful as possible. So you can see I've done roughly just over probably a quarter at design. I've tried to take things slow so you can see what I'm doing. But the aim of this little exercise is to put everything that we've already learned into practice. Now I've chose this design for a particular reason. It's not over complex. It really does hit down on everything that we've already learned and put it into practice, apart from the straight lines. However, it is a lot more common to get curved lines, and there's very little things in life that you end up tattooing with perfectly straight lines. That being said, they are very, very important to learn and to master to the best of your ability. So make sure that you do really practice these straight lines. So like I said, I've done about a quarter with you. Hopefully you've been following along. If you do feel uncomfortable still, just stop, and whichever bits that you're not particularly comfortable with, just go back to previous lessons and just recap. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't know about my hand positioning with this curved line, don't worry about it. Either just do it to whichever method feels natural for you and comfortable, or go back to that previous lesson, just watch it again, recap, refresh. Maybe just come back and do a couple of little circles, or a couple of little wiggles, just to build your confidence back up, and then come back and carry on with your design. But for today's lesson, make sure that this design is completed. So I'm just gonna slowly go through a little bit more so you can keep watching. Like I said, I am trying to do this nice and slow, just so you can follow along and try to see and understand what I'm doing, in what order, and why I'm doing it in that order. So like I say, I'm left-handed, I've worked across bottom, and now I'm building up slightly and working my way across. However, if you are right-handed, don't worry, you'd just be working up the right-hand side first to avoid smudging. Also, just on that note, I said that I'm going to constantly remind you about stretching, so your spare hand on a person would be stretching that skin. Now if you notice, a lot of the time I have my hand at the bottom because I don't want to smudge that stencil whilst I'm stretching. So I would have it at the bottom and I would be pulling down on the skin. That'd pull it all tight. And then with this hand, I'd be pulling this way at the same time, so it's stretching the skin. If you don't know why we need to stretch and why it's important, go back to the very first lesson where I explained that the stretch on the skin stops that skin bouncing and as much movement, and it also controls the depth of the needle to make it a consistent depth. Obviously you already knew answer to that. If you didn't, go back to lesson 1. So I'm just going to slowly do some bits, you can follow along with me. I'll explain some bits, I'll leave some for you to work out yourself. Everything that we're doing in this lesson has already been covered. We've already practiced it. We've done specific drills that purely focus on each aspect of doing this. So you can see these little lines that go between these two circular shapes are straight lines. We've practiced doing straight lines. Now you can see that as I'm tattooing, it's not leaving excess ink everywhere. If yours is, it could be a number of things. It may be that your machine is running far too fast and it's spurting ink out everywhere. Or the other thing that it typically could be is if, it's difficult to see, if you can see tip of my needle how far it's hanging out, if you're riding the tube, so to speak, so obviously nowhere near does all that needle go into the skin. I use just the tip, the very end. However, some people, as I've explained in a different video, it's what they call riding the tube. So they'll have just the very tip that's going to be going into the skin hanging out. Now, all that does is when the tube's touching the skin, it just allows all the ink to flow out of your tube onto the skin, makes a puddle just everywhere, it makes a complete mess, and you've got no control over depth apart from that one depth. You can't make it go any deeper or any less because you rely on the tube being on skin and touching the skin, and that's what sets your depth. And that's why I advise having it hanging out further, which is all explained in another video. And it doesn't allow as much ink to just flow onto the skin, it just comes down with needle, which makes it a lot easier to tattoo because there's not masses of ink everywhere. It's a lot clearer and easier to see what you're doing. And also, you've got more control over how deep or not your needles entering skin. The difficult side of that is that you've got to feel with your hand how deep you're going. Again, it's all explained in another video, a lot more in depth. So you can see on that line that I've just done, I got so far, tapered out, and when I come back, I'd change my hand position so it were more comfortable to do. Don't think that when I said you're not allowed to move the mat means that you can't get yourself in a position that's comfortable. That's why we're not moving mat, to force you to move, to get into comfortable positions and to be tattooing at different angles. So I'm just going to slowly go through rest. I'll get halfway, so if you want to just watch, try and follow along and just comment to yourself what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. And then for those that prefer to just crack on, finish the other half by yourself. For those that prefer listening and having a bit more guidance, just go back to the start of the video and just listen as I'm doing it again, but just do it on other half. I'm trying to balance things depending on what each individual would like. Obviously people like learning in different ways, so I'm trying my best to do things to cater for everybody. Obviously it is impossible, but I'll try my best. Sorry, that light's just in my way. Another thing just to bear in mind, tattooing these artificial skins, these practice mats, it is a lot slower than tattooing a person, because it takes more to push the ink into this artificial skin than what it would do on real skin. So that's why I've said it numerous times, if you can tattoo these, believe me, tattooing a person at the end of this course under correct supervision, I'll just add that in, should be a lot easier. I'll just try and dry that off. So we've roughly done half of it. This is where we put everything that we've already learnt into practice. That's why I've chose this particular design. Hopefully you have a lot of fun. Don't get too stressed. Don't panic. Don't think, oh, I've ruined that one line. Fucking hell, I can't do the rest of it now. I'm going to have to start again. Just don't worry. Just go through entire design. And then at the end, look back at what you've done and think, right, that bit's a little bit wobbly. I've not done that bit best that I could. This little area here could be improved. And just make an honest assessment of what you've done. Don't be stopping and starting and getting too worked up. Just complete the tattoo and then look at it. but look at each individual section of the tattoo individually. And I'll just go over what I mean by that again. So if I were tattooing that line from there to there, I'd ignore rest at tattoo. Just focus on the one section that you're doing. I'd look at that as just a curved line, like we did in previous drills and practice lessons. I'd then move on to this one, and I'd just look at that as doing a curved line. I won't think this is part of a tattoo, this is a petal. I'd look at the design, see that it's just a bold curved line, and that is what I would do. That's really, really important. And as we're progressing onto complex designs and doing realistic tattoos, portraits, it might be a realistic rose, they don't have outlines. You've never seen a person walking about with a black outline round the face. You've never been walking down a footpath and there's a bunch of roses and you've seen them with a black outline round edge. Tattoo what you see. So as we're looking at this design, we can just see a solid curved line. Whilst we're doing this, we just look at the stencil and we tattoo a solid curved line. It is as simple as that. Try not to overthink things. So I'll just do a tiny bit more. I enjoy tattooing. Like I said, I've said it in a previous lesson, I've never worked a day in my life since I started tattooing. This is why. I've done what I planned to do for the lesson, but now I'm doing a bit more because it's enjoyable. It's almost therapeutic. If you're not getting that feeling now, don't worry. It's because it's all new to you. But when I said it's like driving a car, once you get used to it and you don't really have to think about it, it's a relaxing. Like I said, it's like driving a car. It can be really stressful at the beginning because you're having to think about everything. But later on in course, once everything starts to become natural and you're not necessarily having to think about it, you just do it automatically. It's really therapeutic. I literally tattoo every day from morning till night. And never once do I think, I'm really tired of this, I just want to go out. I enjoy being here. And I enjoy doing every tattoo that I've ever done. Don't get me wrong, sometimes there can be odd customer that the skin causes you problems. It's a bit of a nightmare getting ink in. You're doing a really complex design that you've never done before. Can be a little bit stressful. But and then at the same time, there's nothing, once you learn the principles, as long as you stick to those principles, there won't really be a tattoo design out there in black and grey that you wouldn't have the skills or knowledge to be able to do. Whether it's a simple design like this one, or whether it be a black and grey portrait, once you've learned the techniques, the drills, the methods, and how to break an image down, then every tattoo is pretty much the same. Sometimes I'll think, you know those colouring books, adult colouring books that you can buy, they're really complex, small, tight designs, and you just spend hours just with different coloured pencils or whatever medium you choose, and it's just relaxing to just sit and colour those in. Personally, it's not something that I do. I get to relax all day, every day. But that's the same, eventually, how you feel when you're supposed to be at work. A tattoo artist essentially is a job. But I know for myself and many of my friends that are tattoo artists, none of them ever wake up on a morning and think, bloody hell, I've got work today. Or not many of them, there is a couple. but if you do things in a particular order that's not stressful, that breaks an image down into bite-sized chunks, there's nothing to be stressed about. Right, that is actually it now. So after I've wiped that away, I'm just going to assess it all, just have a good look. Is there any bits that I'm not happy with that need improving? I can see some straight away. Some of these little lines in the middle don't quite go from one line to another. They slightly fall short. So I'll just go in and fix them now. But we're roughly halfway. What I want you to do is to just finish that design. And for today's lesson, I only want you to be doing this one design. Okay, take your time with it. Try your best to get it right. If you do any little mess ups, any bits that are wrong, don't worry too much about it. What I don't want you doing is rushing through it and making unnecessary errors. It is not about quantity. It is about quality. In future, when you're tattooing people, they're going to appreciate it a lot more if they're getting something to a high standard than you're just rushing through and doing shabby work because you're not concentrating, you're not taking the time needed, and it is going to massively affect your business in a whole, your reputation, and how far you get in this industry. Every tattoo is a walking advertisement for your shop, or you as a person if you're working in somebody else's shop. Get it right. Take your time. So finish that, and that's end of today's lesson. Well done for getting to end of yet another lesson. Hopefully you can now start to see that these small bite-sized lessons are starting to come together. Now you're actually using the techniques that we've been learning and practicing and creating actual tattoo designs that a future customer could very well ask for. Again, we're still only at the very start of your journey, so don't be too hard on yourself. But at the same time, look at your work and just be aware of the areas that you need to improve and make sure to put focus on those areas. If you are feeling good and want to do a bit more, then go back to previous lessons and practice your weak areas. These simple drills really are the building blocks of every great tattoo artist. So the more time spent perfecting these skills, the better for you and the faster you're going to reach the level of tattooing that you want to reach. Again, well done, and I'll see you in the next video. Quickly, if you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and have clicked the notification bell. Also, the reason that I've put these videos on completely free of charge is because I want to help as many people as possible excel at tattooing. So if you feel that these videos have helped you, then please do your bit to help the channel back, and that's to give the videos a like and comment any feedback. Then finally, share any videos, if not them all, across your social media platforms. My goal is to reach as many future tattoo artists as possible and to help point them in the right direction. Thanks again, and I'll speak soon.